Right, hello folks. Really happy to see you on EclipseCon. On our session today we're going to talk about Eclipse Che and how to run your favorite IDE on Kubernetes. My name is Ilya. I'm software engineer at Red Hat. I'm also Eclipse Che committer. Currently I'm mainly working on Eclipse Che hosted by Red Hat for OpenShift Developer Sandbox. It's actually the easiest way to try Eclipse Che online and to try OpenShift. With a click you can get your workspace provisioned, up and running. And today with me is David.
Yep. Hello everyone, my name is David. I also work as a software engineer at Red Hat and also working more on features and tasks related to the Eclipse Che instance on the developer sandbox for Red Hat. Yeah, nice to be here.
All right, so Eclipse Che is the Eclipse project under APL 2.0, and it's basically a platform for providing Kubernetes native IDEs for developer teams. And before we actually start, I have a question for you. So how much time do you think the developer team spent on configuration and setup on a weekly basis? Do you have any idea?
20%?
Yes, Matthew?
20% about?
Yeah, the ballpark figure is right. So according to various reports, it's around 20-25% of time is spent exactly on configuration and setup. And if you think about it, it's like a big figure. So the onboarding process is time-consuming and tedious. In many companies, it's not exaggeration. You need weeks to get the builds running on your machines. And this is the problem that we are solving with Eclipse Che in a very elegant way. And we just would like to jump into the demo. So imagine it's your first day at work, and you need to start with a new project. So now I'm pass it over to David, who is going to introduce you to the first day at work demo flow that we have for you.
Yep, thank you, Ilya. So let's imagine I'm at my first day at my new job, and already I'm working on a GitHub project, this project right here, a Quarkus Java project, REST API, with 5 endpoints, dealing with these food resources being stored in a PostgreSQL database. So this is our project that we'll be working for the demo today. And already on my first day, I'm assigned a task to work on. It's this issue right here, 500 internal server error. Cannot create new food items from the landing page. So it looks like there's a video. So there's a landing page, and you see over there at the bottom, if we try to add a new food item, at the right-hand side, we see 500 internal server error. So that seems to be a problem. Let's try to fix this issue. And thanks to the fact that this project on GitHub is already well integrated with Eclipse Che, at the bottom here, we have 3 badges to start a Eclipse Che workspace with the editor of our choice. So for today, I'll start the workspace with VS Code. So I'll click on the badge, I'll open in a new tab, and that will start up my workspace on the new tab. So I'd like to quickly introduce the Eclipse Che dashboard. This is the user dashboard that every user can access and manage their workspaces. You can see the workspace I just started is starting up. How this looks like on the OpenShift side of things, so OpenShift being Red Hat's offering of Kubernetes. The workspace pod should be starting up, and we should see the pod here, the workspace pod. And if we examine the pod, we have some containers here where our project would run. The containers would have the runtimes we need for development. We also have the PostgreSQL database as well. So everything we need for our development for this specific project is already in the workspace pod. So going back into the previous tab, it looks like our workspace has started up. On the left-hand side, we have our project already cloned. And let's try to reproduce the original issue, so 500 internal server error. So from here, I'm going to start a VS Code task to run the project within one of the containers we have in the workspace pod. So I'll run the start development mode task. So this is just running a Maven command to start the Quarkus project. So in the terminal here, we can see we're downloading the Maven artifacts for this project. And what's going on is that the artifacts are being downloaded via it's downloading to a persistent volume. So if we stop the workspace pod and start up the workspace again, it's a different pod. So the same persistent volume will be mounted to the workspace pod once it starts up. So essentially, this would be the only time we are downloading these specific Maven artifacts for this project. So next time we stop the workspace and start the workspace again and run our application, we don't need to download these artifacts anymore. And while we wait until the application runs, I would also like to demonstrate we can start a terminal inside one of our containers in our workspace pod, and we also have access to kubectl. You can see our workspace pod right here, and we can also even deploy, apply templates, for example, so for our cluster that we're already connected to. So right off the bat, we can have access to kubectl as well. So looks like our workspace is, looks like our application is almost starting up. Okay, open in a new tab. So application has started up, and if we just refresh here, we should see that this endpoint that we're reaching is the get all resources endpoint, so getting all food items, and this is all coming from the PostgreSQL database. So let's go into the landing page and reproduce the initial issue. So this is the landing page. And I'll add the same details as the original GitHub issue. So name is pizza, local deli. If I press add item, we can reproduce the issue. So 500 internal server error. This project has the Quarkus or Swagger UI already integrated within it. So let's try to actually make the post request with Swagger and see if we could see that 500 server error there as well. This is our post endpoint for creating new items, and let's put in the same details here. Okay, execute, and yep, looks like we have a 500 internal server error. Looks like some sort of unhandled exception, persistence exception, and okay, we can reproduce the issue for sure. And let's try to solve this issue within our workspace. So going back, let's open the Java file that has the method that runs for the post endpoint, and yeah, let's try to fix this issue. So I'm not quite familiar with the code base. I need some help. So let's try to do pair programming and have colleague help me for today. So I'm going to go into the extensions and install GenuaText Code Together extension to start a pair programming session. So I'll press install. And this is coming from the OpenVSX extension registry. So, okay, the extension has been installed, and I'm going to start a new session. I'll keep the default settings here and start the session. And this copies the invite URL to the clipboard automatically. So I'm going to pass that URL to my colleague, and hopefully I can get some help. So we have a video for this, part of the demo. So this is the pair programming session. Our colleague is also using an Eclipse Che workspace running the IntelliJ IDE. So also with the Code Together extension installed in IntelliJ. So from here, I'll just play the demo. We'll press join remote session and paste the same invite URL that I passed on to my colleague, and we will share one session together. So share a cursor, and then from our colleague's point of view, we'll open the same project here. So this is the same file that I was on before. We'll go into the post request or post endpoint method, and the proposed solution for our issue is the incoming food item. We've actually set an ID of 6, and that seems to be causing the issue. So the proposed solution here would be just if the incoming food item has an ID already, then just return a bad request, because it's kind of the server's or application's responsibility to determine the ID of the new item. So from here, we'll just, if there's an ID, then just return bad request. And we'll also edit the landing page as well, so that we don't read the ID in the first place. So this is from my point of view back into VS Code, and our colleague is editing the text box for the landing page. So we're going to disable the ID, and also we'll edit the JavaScript as well, so that we don't collect the ID in the first place. Okay, great. So that was the video demo for pair programming. But of course, in my actual workspace that we've started, we don't have the changes. So I'll just do a git apply and just apply the changes right now. So we've made our changes, and thanks to the live reload feature, live coding feature of Quarkus, I don't need to run any new command or anything like that. So already my changes will be in effect. So let's go into the landing page and see if that solved our issue. Here's the landing page. The ID text box has been disabled. And I'm going to put in the same details as before and add the item. So it looks like no more 500 internal server error anymore. Let's just get all the food items from our database, and we can see our new item is inside the database as well. It has been persisted, and yeah, it seems like we've solved the issue and ready to make a PR. So going back into the workspace, I will make a PR for this issue. Also add a remote. And I will push to my fork. Okay, great. So now I will make the PR, and let's see how that looks like. So from here, I'll create the pull request. And this GitHub project also has the try and web IDE GitHub action configured as well. So once I make the pull request, thanks to that GitHub action, there should be a comment that would be added to the pull request with a similar badge as before. So a collaborator would be able to click on this badge to start their own workspace with the changes that I've made and test my changes in their workspace without any local configuration as well. So that was the first day at work demo. So already on my first day, in maybe 20 minutes or so, I was able to get up a development environment running. I was able to run the application and have a proposed solution for our issue. So this was kind of the breakdown of what we just saw in the demo. We had to get a project, pass it on to Eclipse Che, and started up a workspace pod where the pod has the containers that we need to actually run our application, has the dependencies we need. We set the PostgreSQL database as well, already there, and all running on OpenShift cluster. So a question that's left unanswered is, how did we know what kind of containers we need in the workspace pod? Where did we configure that? Like, where did we configure those containers for that specific project? And that comes from the dev file of the project. So the project owner would maybe add a dev file to specify that kind of information. And Ilya will explain more about the dev file as well.
Yeah, thank you, David, for the demo. Indeed, Eclipse Che is dev file-centric project. So it uses dev files to create workspaces. But the question is, what is a dev file? And dev file is basically a CNCF sandbox project. And it's open standard for defining containerized development environment. So basically, if you think about it, the idea is very similar to Jenkins file, when you store your Jenkins file inside of the repository in a declarative way, you describe your pipelines, and Jenkins understands this Jenkins file and creates it accordingly. So very similar concept applies to the dev file, but for development environment. Dev file is basically stored inside of the repository, and it contains container images, references which could be tools, databases, as well as environment variables, endpoints, volume mounts, and commands for building, running, debugging, testing your application. So all in one. If we think about the dev file concept, it's not actually something brand new. So there was a dev file version 1, which was like Eclipse Che specific thing. So only Eclipse Che used it. And how it worked, so we use dev file specification, also YAML format. So our dashboard read this dev file and pass it to Che server, which used to be the main component of Eclipse Che, basically a Java application running on Tomcat, which used under the hood the Fabricate Kubernetes library and created the workspaces accordingly. So, and workspaces basically Kubernetes objects, pods, containers, persistent volumes, etc. So now the situation is different. So dev file is the open API specification part of CNCF as a sandbox project, which is vendor neutral. So it's not tied into Eclipse Che. Any tool or project can leverage it. So we have contributions from various companies there. So how it works now? So dev file is used also by the dashboard. So it reads the dev file and create the custom resource. Because now the key component of Eclipse Che is DevWorkspace operator. So if you are familiar with operator lifecycle manager framework, so it actually, we use it under the hood, and we use a dedicated operator, and this operator extends Kubernetes API. And based on this custom resource, DevWorkspace operator creates the Kubernetes resources, which is basically pods, services, secrets, config maps. And what it gives us, so if you think about it, if we extend the Kubernetes API, we don't need anything on top. So we can use kubectl to create and manage our workspaces. And the next demo that David is going to show you is exactly about managing the workspaces using kubectl.
Yes. So here I have a template here for DevWorkspace custom resource where I have some details about the actual workspace, and I'm able to use kubectl to deploy this custom resource onto my cluster and start a workspace with kubectl. So I'll do just that. First, I'll just create a new project on my OpenShift cluster, and I will apply the template. Okay, so I've applied the template, and if I run OC get devworkspaces, we can see that the workspace is in the starting phase, and it's just waiting for the workspace deployment. So if I also get the pods in my namespace, we can see the workspace pod is initializing, and we're just waiting for the workspace to complete its startup. So I'll just do get workspaces again, and with the watch flag, and let's just wait until the workspace starts up. Okay, looks like it's Looks like it's still initializing. Sometimes I like to look into the events to see what's going on. And yes, it's just waiting for the editor to start now. Okay, now our workspace is running. We can see on the info column, we have the URL to directly access that workspace. So I'll copy that and access the workspace in my web browser. Okay, so we see VS Code, and we should also see a project that's also cloned at the side as well. That's the Golang sample project. Okay, so we're able to start the workspace. We could also stop the workspace as well by editing the custom resource in whatever Kubernetes client you would like. So I'll just I'll use the OpenShift console to do this. I'll look for the DevWorkspace resource, and from here to stop workspaces, all you can do is go to the spec and set the started to false, and that would just stop the workspace. After saving the YAML, going back into the pods, we see that our workspace pod is terminating. So we're able to manage workspaces with kubectl or whatever Kubernetes client you would like as well. And yes, the info, you can see it stopped, the phase is stopped. And going back to the slides, I'm going to go into a bit on how you can choose different editors for your Eclipse Che workspace. So when you install Eclipse Che on a Kubernetes cluster, there's already a predefined set of editors that you can choose out of the box. In theory, you can run any editor or IDE as long as it's containerized. I'll go into how the badges worked in the first demo. Accessing the badge is essentially accessing a URL to start a workspace. So in this URL, you can specify what editor you would like, along with other customizations as well. So how this URL looks like is the first part is the Che hostname. This is the same for every user, and this is what you use to access the Eclipse Che dashboard. So same for every user. Next part is the Git repository URL of the project you want to clone in your workspace. And the last part is parameters to customize the workspace startup. So you can specify your editor ID for the editor or IDE you would want with the Che editor parameter. And this is explained in the Eclipse Che documentation as well, along with other parameters. So a quick demo for that. I've already prepared a URL to start a different editor for today. So I think it's yes, this one right here. So this URL would just start up our same project, the Quarkus project, with the IntelliJ IDE. So once I start that, it creates a new workspace. We can also verify on the Eclipse Che dashboard that we have a second workspace here, and it looks like for now we can have only one running workspace at a time. So I'll just click close running workspace and restart my new workspace. So I'll click that. So once you've created this URL, one thing you can do is you can pass this URL onto a colleague, and your colleague can start up their own workspace environment with just that URL. So it's pass it to a colleague to get up and running, starting workspaces on their personal namespace too. Okay, I'll continue, and we should see the IntelliJ IDE open. There's also different ways you can choose editors for your workspaces as well. If you go into the Eclipse Che dashboard, there are some sample projects you can get up and running with. If you click on the three dots at the top right, you can choose an editor from here as well. You can also customize, or the admin of the Eclipse Che installation can customize kind of the default editor or default IDE for all users. So this is done in the Che cluster custom resource. So this is something that an administrator would be able to do. inside of the dev environments section of the spec, we can specify the ID of the default editor. So once, if maybe the users don't specify their own editor specifically, then it would just choose the default editor from the Che cluster custom resource. This is essentially where you can customize Eclipse Che. So going back into the slides, I'll pass it back to Ilya for the closing notes.
Yeah, thank you, folks. So we're at the end of the session now. So in order to get involved, please visit our website, eclipse.org/che. So we have a brand new website with all the details and all the information, how it works under the hood, with also links to our docs and blog posts. We have a separate blog post website where we get also contributions from the community, and also links to Mattermost, where we would be happy to chat with you, as well as to our mailing list. With that, I think we have a couple of minutes for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, please.
How does it work with the Eclipse IDE?
Yeah, great question. So I can take that one probably. The point is that Eclipse Che is basically a platform for Kubernetes native IDEs, and any IDE can be run as part of the Eclipse Che as long as it is containerized and as long as it uses web technology. So Eclipse Desktop IDE doesn't use the web technologies, but it has JDK Broadway concept where you can actually run Eclipse IDE in browser, and we have a proof of concept for that. So if you're interested, I can show you after the session like how it works. So yeah, technically it's possible. We have it in our plugin registry. We have the list of predefined editors. So it's also available there. So yeah, it's possible, but it's more like a proof of concept rather than the full-blown IDE there. Hope it answers the question. Any other questions? All right, folks, so we'll be still around today. So if you have something to discuss with us, please come and we'll be happy to chat. Thank you.
Thank you.